campaign manager at a tech company. By night, I'm a woman counting down the hours to the most important day of my life, my wedding to the man I've loved for the past 7 years, Jordan, 32, a software engineer and the kindest man I've ever met. Everything had been planned to the last detail. Flowers from my favorite local shop, an intimate dinner with our closest friends, and the dress I ordered 6 months in advance. Jordan and I had saved for 2 years to make this ceremony happen. Something warm and genuine, held at a small countryside ranch just outside the city. No extravagance, no showing off, just one meaningful, beautiful day. And yet, everything nearly came undone because of one sentence from my mother. "Alyssa, I think you should cancel the wedding. Savannah is still heartbroken after the divorce. As her sister, you should be more considerate and not add to her pain." I remember standing frozen in the middle of the cafe, phone in hand, mocha spilling over the lid, but I felt nothing. Cancel the wedding? Because of my sister? If you're wondering who Savannah is, here's the context. She's my half-sister, 25 years old, living with my mother ever since I moved out at 18. She's the kind of person my mom always calls the poor, sensitive, fragile one, even though Savannah is usually the one stirring chaos wherever she goes. She had just finalized a divorce after a marriage that lasted exactly 58 days. And now, according to my mother, my happiness was somehow a threat to her emotional stability. I know how absurd that sounds. But my mother was dead serious. She wasn't asking me to delay the wedding. She wasn't hoping I'd show empathy. She was demanding that I cancel it altogether, and when I refused, everything began to spiral. I wish I could say it all ended with a single heated family argument. But no, my mother and sister turned my wedding into their battleground, and me. I had to do something no one thought I'd ever be cold enough to do. I crossed my mother and sister off the guest list. Because sometimes the only thing standing between you and madness is a closed door. And you know what the wildest part is? I don't regret it, not even a little. But if you think that was the end of the story, you have no idea what came next. I was born and raised in Austin, Texas. When I was 6, my parents divorced, a quiet separation, but cold enough to make my mom pack up and start a new chapter. And that chapter was named Dale. The man she met while working as an accountant for a small real estate firm. Dale was the kind of man who talked too much, laughed too loudly, and was dangerously lenient. He had much. The only thing he ever really succeeded at was leaving my mother with a child, Savannah, born when I was 7. From that moment on, my mother's world shrank down to just 2 things, Dale and Savannah. I became a shadow in my own home. And Savannah, she was the baby girl, the precious gem, the bright note in my mother's gloomy life. I remember the time I got a perfect score on an 8th grade math test. My mom glanced at it and said, "That's fine, but you should work on your expressions. Your smile looks a bit forced." Meanwhile, all Savannah had to do was yawn on stage during her kindergarten ballet recital, and my mother wept like she was witnessing an angel descend from heaven. When I was 16, I asked to get a part-time job at a small bookstore near school so I could save up for a second-hand laptop. When Savannah turned 16, my mother bought her a brand new iPhone, because she might get bullied if she doesn't have what other kids have. It was always the same formula. I figured things out for myself. Savannah had things figured out for her. I learned to survive in that household by quietly picking myself up every time I was overlooked. I studied hard, earned a scholarship to college, lived in the dorms, worked part-time in a research lab, and eventually landed a job offer from a pretty well-known tech startup. I rented my first apartment by myself. No one helped me. And Savannah. She dropped out of college after 1 semester because the professors weren't inspiring. She tried being a TikToker, then a barista, then a nail salon assistant. Nothing lasted more than 3 months. Her current situation? Still living with my mom, eating breakfasts mom cooks for her, and spending her days rediscovering herself. Her love life was as chaotic as her career path. Savannah changed boyfriends as often as she changed nail color. And every breakup sent my mother into emotional collapse, as if the world was ending. They'd sit in the kitchen crying together, hugging and sobbing, while I'd quietly refill my water bottle and slip out like I was invisible. But Jordan, Jordan was the light in all those silent, lonely years. I met him at a marketing conference nearly 7 years ago. He wasn't the type to charm a room or deliver sweet talk. He was the type who'd remember whether you like ice in your coffee or not. The kind of man who'd sit and listen to you vent about deadlines even if he had no idea what you were talking about. He was peace. Jordan saw me cry when my mom forgot my birthday. He saw me smile when Savannah got a new dress for Valentine's Day. He never told me to forgive. He just held my hand and stayed. And that's exactly why I chose to marry him. But life is never easy for those who know how to love, especially when you grow up in a family where other people's misfortunes are always more important than your own joy. I still remember that evening vividly. Jordan and I were sitting together in our little kitchen, the soft glow of candlelight reflecting off the ring he had just slipped onto my finger a few hours earlier. Simple, warm, and perfect, just the way we liked it. A quiet night, takeout food, and a proposal that wasn't flashy, but full of sincerity. I had never felt so happy. And I wanted to share that joy with my mother, even though deep down I knew hoping for a warm hug or even a tearful congratulations from her was probably wishful thinking. Still, she was my mother, so I called her Mom. Jordan proposed tonight. I held my breath, waiting for some flicker of emotion, a word of congratulations, a question about the ring, anything. But instead, her voice came through the phone as cold as ice. "Oh, Savannah's going to be really upset about that." I thought she was joking. I let out a light laugh, expecting her to backtrack, but she didn't. She went on. "She just broke up with her boyfriend last month. She's still not over it. And now you're getting married. Do you think she can handle that?" I didn't know what to say. How does something so joyful suddenly feel like a crime? A few weeks later, Savannah posted an engagement photo on Facebook. The kind of photo you just know was rushed. She stood next to some guy wearing a DJ t-shirt with a ridiculously oversized logo, his hand placed on her stomach, as if they were announcing a pregnancy. Even though they weren't. His name was Chase, a part-time DJ at a cheap bar near downtown. Savannah had known him for less than 2 months. She captioned the photo with, "When you know, you know." I didn't say anything. Neither did Jordan. We chose silence. I even liked her post, though my heart was full of confusion. 3 weeks later, my mother called me. "You should come and support her. She really wants her big sister there." Support her? I hadn't even had a proper coffee date with her and Jordan since my engagement. Still, I went. I wore a modest dress and sat quietly in the back row of a rushed ceremony at a tiny chapel off the highway. Savannah wore a glittery sequin gown like she was heading to Vegas, and Chase showed up late. No one in my family questioned anything. My mother, in fact, couldn't have been prouder. During the reception, she gave a toast and said, "Savannah always follows her heart. She dares to love, dares to marry, and dares to believe in real love." I couldn't help but wonder if I had rushed into marriage like that, would she have called me impulsive or irresponsible? 2 months later, Chase vanished. I heard from my aunt in Dallas that he had slept with Savannah's best friend and taken off with her laptops and a necklace passed down from our grandmother. Savannah filed for divorce shortly after. Her social media accounts went private. My mother went from posting non-stop wedding photos to posting deep, philosophical quotes like, "The most broken ones are often the quietest." I called my mom, just to check in. "Is Savannah okay, Mom?" She sighed. "Not at all. She hasn't eaten in days, and honestly, you should be more considerate. This isn't the time to talk about your own wedding." I stayed silent. I didn't want to hurt Savannah. I knew that. But I hadn't expected that from that moment on, I would officially become the one who causes pain in the eyes of both my mother and my sister. Every time I posted anything wedding-related, a bouquet sample, a cake tasting, or even just a picture with Jordan, Savannah would immediately send me a snarky message. "Right. Must be nice living your perfect life, huh?" And my mother? She'd call me, her tone tight and pressing. "Could you tone it down a bit? Savannah's still very fragile. Don't flaunt things like that." No matter how thoughtful or gentle I was, I would always be the invisible villain simply because I dared to be happy. And that was only the beginning. My life was slowly turning into a mirror that reflected my sister's failures. I tried to be patient. I really did, until they took it one step further. They asked me to cancel the entire wedding. It was a Monday morning in late November, exactly 6 weeks before the big day. I had just received the final confirmation email from the florist, and Jordan was tweaking the dinner playlist with his usual quiet focus. Everything was finally coming together, like the last pieces of a puzzle. I was sipping my coffee when my phone buzzed. The caller ID read, "Mom." My first thought was, strange. My mom's not the type to call. She prefers short texts like "seen" or "okay." At most, she calls once a month, and it's always about Savannah. I picked up. "Alyssa, are you free right now?" "Yes, Mom, what's going on?" "I need to talk to you, seriously." Then she continued, "Are you really planning to go through with this wedding as scheduled?" "Yes, you know that, Mom. Everything's already been booked." There was a pause. Then she sighed, that kind of long, weary sigh I knew all too well, the kind that always came before something I never wanted to hear. "I've thought about it a lot, and I really think you should cancel the wedding." I froze. What? What? Cancel it. Or at least make it something smaller. Just a quiet ceremony at church. Something simple, just with close family. Are you serious? We've been planning this for nearly a year. Everything's already paid for, deposits, invitations, the guest accommodations, even the menu. I know. But Savannah, she can't handle it anymore. Every time she hears about the wedding, she cries all night. She feels abandoned. She's still healing, Alyssa. It felt like someone had poured a bucket of ice water directly into my chest. You're asking me to cancel my own wedding because my sister got divorced? It's not about the divorce. It's about her pain. She's lost her faith in love, and you throwing a big wedding only deepens that wound. It makes her feel even more broken. I gripped my phone tightly. Mom, I've already held my tongue through so much. I didn't say a word when Savannah married a guy she barely knew. I didn't judge her when she got divorced. I even refrained from posting too much about the wedding because you said I should be sensitive, and now you want me to erase everything just because she's not happy. My mother's voice turned cold as ice. You're being incredibly selfish. I thought you were someone who cared about family. Clearly, I was wrong. Then her tone sharpened into anger. No one wants to see you flaunt your perfect life while Savannah is struggling in pain. If you truly loved your sister, you would postpone it, or keep it simple. There's no need for a big show. I hung up. My hands were trembling, my heart pounding. I told Jordan what happened, and he just looked at me silent. After a while, he finally said, "You don't have to take this anymore. This is your day, not theirs." But it didn't stop there. That night, I got a text from Savannah. "January, really? Did you pick that month just to remind me I got divorced? Must be nice living the life people only dream of. I guess some people are just born lucky." I didn't respond, but every message felt like a needle piercing straight into my chest. And then came the family wave. My youngest aunt texted, "You should try to understand your mom. She's just trying to protect Savannah." My cousin called me. "What's the point of a big wedding if it comes at the cost of breaking your family apart?" I slowly realized what was happening. Lines were being drawn, sides were being chosen, and I was the one standing alone. Me, the one who had never asked for anything, who'd taken care of herself since she was 18, was now being called selfish, cold, and lacking empathy, all because I didn't want my wedding to become someone else's emotional funeral. And the worst part? My own mother was leading the charge. In the weeks that followed, it felt like I'd fallen into some alternate dimension where every single thing I did, no matter how small, was twisted into evidence that I was cruel, heartless, and had abandoned my family. My mother started spreading stories among relatives that I was choosing a man over blood. She called my aunt in Houston and told her I had gotten a little success and forgotten who raised me. She texted my cousin, whom I hadn't spoken to in over 3 years, saying I'd been brainwashed by Jordan. One day, I even got an email from a distant cousin, the kind who never even liked a single one of my posts. "Alyssa, I don't know exactly what's going on, but if you could just humble yourself a bit for the sake of family, you should. Blood is still blood." Blood? I broke down crying the moment I read that line. I didn't want to be anyone's enemy. I just wanted to be happy at my own wedding without having to ask permission to feel joy. Jordan saw everything. He quietly reprinted our guest list and asked if I wanted to temporarily cross out the neutral ones to ease the stress. We went name by name, and each one felt like another little knife carving into my chest. I felt like I was becoming someone else. The woman who once joyfully planned every detail was now waking up with guilt for daring to smile. The woman who once confidently wrote vows of love was now second-guessing every period and exclamation mark for fear it might be seen as showing off. And then it happened. That night, Jordan was sitting in the living room working. I was in the kitchen making tea. His phone buzzed and I heard him sigh, softly but enough to catch my attention. I walked over. "Who is it?" "Savannah," he said. I froze. He handed me the phone. The first message read, "Jordan, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I feel like you're the only one who actually understands me. I know you see what Alyssa's doing is a bit much. I'm not trying to cause problems. I just needed to talk to someone who won't judge me." I looked at Jordan. He was eerily calm. "There's more," he said, and scrolled down. The next message. "Sometimes I wonder if things would have been different if you'd met me before her. Anyway, thank you for always being kind. Just know that I really do care about you." I let the phone drop into my hands. I could barely stand. Everything around me felt like it was crumbling. It wasn't just a violation of my relationship. It was the shameless cruelty of someone who had always been shielded under the excuse of she's hurting. I felt humiliated, or furious, devastated, and more than anything, Jordan wrapped his arms around me and said softly, "I've never encouraged anything, and I will never reply to her. But I thought you needed to see this, so you know you're not crazy." I broke down in tears. But this time, they weren't weak tears. This time, my tears were a farewell to the last illusions I held about family by blood. I wiped my eyes, looked him straight in the face, and said, think it's time I do what I should have done a long time ago." After reading Savannah's last message, I didn't cry anymore. I wasn't afraid of being judged. I wasn't worried about some relative saying I was too harsh or that I should show more grace to my family. I just felt calm. Strangely calm, like when you're thrown to the bottom of a storm and you finally find something solid to stand on. I sat down at the table, opened my laptop, and started a new email. The subject line was the first thing I wrote. Subject: regarding the wedding final decision. I kept it short. No emotion, no circling around the point. To Mom and Savannah. After everything that's been said and done, including the pressure to cancel the wedding, the spreading of false narratives, and most recently, the inappropriate messages sent to my fiancé, I've thought long and hard. This is my final decision. You will not be attending my and Jordan's wedding. For full transparency, I've attached screenshots of the messages Savannah sent to Jordan. These clearly explain why I cannot allow either of you to be present on the most important day of my life. I paused for a moment, my hands still resting on the keyboard. A small part of me felt sorrow not because I wanted them there, but because I once hoped my mother would love me enough to choose my side, at least once in her life. Then I typed the final lines. This email is not written to spark debate, nor to seek understanding. It is to inform, and this time, I will not take it back. I hit send. Less than 15 minutes later, I got a reply from my mother. 2 pages long, filled with the same old lines I knew by heart. "Can't believe you'd be this heartless. You've chosen a lonely path for yourself. If your father were alive, he would be deeply disappointed in you." I didn't read the whole thing. I just scrolled to the bottom and hit archive. Jordan walked into the kitchen and saw me sitting quietly. He asked gently, "You okay?" I nodded. For the first time in weeks, I feel at peace. We decided to permanently remove my mother and Savannah from the guest list. We even sent an update to the wedding coordinator. These 2 individuals are not permitted on the property during the ceremony. I thought I'd break down, but the miracle was the clearer I drew the boundary, the lighter I felt. That's when I started receiving different kinds of messages. From Aunt Carol. My dad's younger sister, Alyssa, I know this hasn't been easy. But you were right to protect yourself. If your father were alive, he would be proud. From Maya, my best friend from college. Finally, the steel girl I always admired is back. You don't need the whole world to love you. You just need the right person to stand beside you. Even my former stepdad, Dale, who divorced my mom years ago, reached out. I'm not defending your mom, but I want you to know Savannah never learned what boundaries are. You did the right thing. Those words didn't erase everything, but they were like little candles, slowly lighting up the dark corners my mother and Savannah had left inside me. One evening, Jordan and I were going over the seating chart again. I looked at the empty spaces and asked softly, "Do you feel sad that our wedding has to begin with wounds like these?" Jordan smiled and squeezed my hand. Not at all. Because this is your wedding, not their performance, and the person you chose to stand with you at the altar is me, not them. I looked at him, and suddenly I realized I was no longer the girl who always swallowed her pain. I was someone who finally knew she deserved to be loved fully, and without condition. The wedding day arrived, a crisp, clear morning in hill country. The sun wasn't too harsh. The sky was so blue you could see lazy white clouds drifting like thoughts unspoken. I stood in front of the mirror inside the little wooden bridal cabin prepared by the venue. My dress was on, hair done, bouquet resting quietly on the table. Jordan was on the other side of the garden, getting ready for our first look. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't nervous. I just felt at peace. All the old wounds, the sleepless nights, the biting texts, the soul-crushing phone calls, they all seemed to dissolve in that morning sunlight. I smiled at myself in the mirror when Amanda, my maid of honor and best friend for life, burst through the door. Her face pale. "Alyssa, we've got a situation. They're here." She turned around. "Who?" Amanda swallowed hard. "Your mom and Savannah. They're at the front gate, screaming, like actually screaming. It's insane." I sat down, placed my hands on my lap. That peace I'd felt just moments ago turned into a sharp chill down my spine. But I didn't crumble. I asked calmly, "Where's security?" "They're holding them back at the parking lot, not letting them in, but they're loud." Closed my eyes for a second, took a deep breath, then said firmly, "No one goes out there. No one opens that gate. They weren't invited, and they do not get to ruin this day." Amanda nodded and rushed out to inform the staff to tighten security. I turned back to the mirror, adjusted a strand of hair, then walked outside, straight toward the garden where Jordan was waiting. When he turned and saw me, his eyes lit up. He didn't ask my hand and said, and I knew that was all that mattered. But outside, the drama wasn't done. As we exchanged vows, shouts echoed from beyond the small patch of woods near the parking lot. You couldn't make out every word, but they were loud enough to stir whispers among the guests. Some people turned their heads. A few leaned toward each other, murmuring. It wasn't until later that I learned exactly what was said. "Alyssa, you're brainwashed." "Savannah, you'll regret this when you realize who your real family is." My mom again. "Open the gate. This is all your fault, all of you." Savannah, nearly screaming, but in that moment, I didn't turn around. I didn't need to, because I knew everyone had seen who they truly were. That evening, during the reception, several guests came up to me. Some shook my hand, others looked me in the eye and said, "You did the right thing. We heard the screaming. After today, no one's buying their little act anymore." Honestly, I always felt something was off about Savannah. Congratulations, not just for marrying Jordan, but for choosing yourself. Aunt Carol, who had quietly supported me from afar this whole time, came up in the middle of the reception, placed her hand on my shoulder, and said, "After today, no one can ever call you selfish again. You didn't break your family, you just saved yourself from a toxic nest." I hugged Aunt Carol, and for the first time in years, I felt what it was like to be called daughter without judgment attached. And Jordan? He just smiled and whispered in my ear, "Told you, this is our wedding. No one else gets to perform on this stage but you." I smiled back, and for the first time, that smile didn't come with guilt. After the wedding, I thought it was all behind us. I really believed that my mother and Savannah crashing the wedding, screaming like they were in some low-budget soap opera, only to be stopped by security in the parking lot, was the final chapter in the chaos. I thought they'd feel ashamed and back off. I was naive. 3 days after the wedding, while I was still unpacking makeup bags and sorting through unedited photos, I got a message from Megan. Alyssa, have you heard? Savannah just told Aunt Myra that you were jealous of her because Jordan had feelings for her. I froze. What? Megan sent a few more texts. She's telling everyone that Jordan confessed to her first and that you're only marrying him to save face. You should know. She's flipping the script, and people who don't know the full story are starting to believe her. I didn't get angry. It was clear. Because by now I fully understood the kind of person Savannah was. A professional victim. A chronic liar. And the main character of a story she wrote for herself. I decided I wouldn't stay silent anymore. I drafted an email to every relative and acquaintance who'd been sitting on the fence. The list wasn't long, but it was enough to shift perception. I attached screenshots of every message Savannah had sent Jordan, including the one where she wrote, "Sometimes I wonder if you'd met me before her, the kind you can't fake," and a short note, not emotional, not accusatory, just clear. To my family, I'm not writing this to beg anyone to take sides. I just want those who are still unsure to understand. I'm not blaming. I'm not holding hate. But I also will not stay silent while the truth is distorted. If, after reading this, you still believe I'm the one at fault, I respect your perspective, and I will quietly step out of your life. To those who've stood by me, even in silence, and I no longer need anyone else, I hit send. Less than an hour later, the first reply came from Aunt Carol. "You are stronger than anyone in this family. I'm proud of you." Then came Uncle Ron, who had always stayed neutral. "I see things clearly now, and I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner." Even Aunt Myra, the very person Savannah used to spread her lies for the first time in months, the silence wasn't my enemy. It was a sign that those who once doubted were finally starting to understand. As for my mother, she never replied. No apology, not a single line of explanation. I assume she's busy defending Savannah, but it doesn't matter anymore. Jordan and I sat down together, pulled up our contact list, and blocked every number, email, and social media account connected to my mother and Savannah. Not out of hate, but because I no longer owe them a place in my life. I'm no longer the daughter pretending to be strong at family dinners, no longer the sister quietly carrying the weight of jealousy disguised as sensitive pain. I am a woman who just married a kind man and chose herself after years of being treated like she didn't matter. And for the first time in my life, I didn't ask anyone's permission to live how I want. A week after the wedding, I got a phone call from Megan once again, our family's most honest broadcast station. "You won't believe this," she said. Her mom kicked her out of the house. I nearly dropped my phone. "What?" Megan retold everything like she was narrating a dramatic TV scene. Ever since being turned away at the wedding, Savannah had been sulking around the house moody, bitter, and blaming the whole world. She accused my mom of not doing enough to stop the wedding, then turned around and claimed it was her fault that she was weak and a failure because she had been coddled all her life. My mother, the same woman who had defended Savannah against all reason for years, finally snapped. According to Megan, she yelled, "I sacrificed my whole life for you, and this is how you repay me? You're 25, Savannah. I can't be the excuse for your mistakes forever." The fight ended with a suitcase thrown onto the front lawn and a door slammed shut and locked. Savannah, I heard, was crashing at a friend's place, or at least that was the rumor. As for my mother, complete silence. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel like I'd won. But I felt free. Because for the first time, I wasn't the one being blamed. I wasn't the one being begged to be the bigger person. I wasn't the one forced to glue back together a family that had been cracked from the start. And, most importantly, I wasn't there anymore. Our honeymoon in Tulum, Mexico was something I'll never forget. Jordan and I stayed in a beachfront bungalow, the kind where you open the window and the waves are practically at your feet. No social media, no emails, no phone calls. Just sunlight, laughter, and two people finally allowed to live for each other. On the third morning, I woke up early and stepped out onto the balcony. Jordan was already there, holding a cup of coffee, the sunrise casting a soft glow over his face. I sat beside him and rested my head on his shoulder. He turned to me and whispered, No more noise, just us. How do you feel? I looked toward the sun and smiled. I feel like I finally own my life, not because I got married, but because I finally chose myself. I stopped trying to be the understanding daughter. Stopped trying to win over people who only knew how to love with conditions. Stopped being afraid that putting my own happiness first made me selfish. For the first time, I felt free. And you know what? There's nothing in this world more valuable than that kind of freedom. If you're going through something similar, please remember this. You are not alone. You are not wrong. And you deserve to be happy fully and without asking anyone's permission. Thank you for staying with me through the very end of this story. If you saw yourself in any part of it, or if you're ready to speak up for yourself, leave a comment below. I read everyone, and you will not be judged here. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs a wake-up call, and hit subscribe so you don't miss more real stories. Raw, powerful, and deeply human, just like this.
I'm Emily, 34.